The ballroom shimmered under golden chandeliers, the kind that made everything look richer than it was. 200 guests filled the room, laughing, clinking glasses, trading stories about promotions and second homes. The air smelled of champagne and polished pride. It was supposed to be my father's night, a celebration of 35 years of hard work. But the moment I stepped through the door, I knew it would turn into something else entirely. I had chosen a simple navy dress, one I had worn before, not out of defiance but comfort. The crowd was wrapped in luxury fabrics and confidence, their laughter loud enough to echo against the mirrored walls. My mother spotted me before I reached the table. Her smile tightened, sharp enough to slice through the noise. She spoke in a voice meant for everyone nearby. "You came empty-handed again," she said, not even trying to hide her disdain. "You couldn't at least help with the bill this time." The guests around us paused, mid-sip. My face felt hot, but my expression stayed still. I simply nodded and pulled out the chair beside her, the silence around me heavier than any spotlight. My brother was already talking about his new bonus, something around $400,000 this year. He made sure to say it twice. My sister leaned closer to one of the guests, mentioning her $1.2 million home in Dallas as if it were proof of her moral standing. My mother beamed at them both, pride softening her tone in a way it never did with me. She thrived on comparison. I had learned that years ago. I kept my hands folded in my lap, studying the bubbles in my glass, how they floated upward, then disappeared without sound. It was easier than looking at her. Around me, the conversations returned, though the laughter felt different now, careful and aware. I could hear every detail, the scrape of a fork, the whisper of silk, the soft hum of a jazz song playing too slowly. Inside, I felt that old ache return, the one that had followed me through childhood dinners and holiday gatherings, but this time, it didn't crush me. I had learned to wear composure like armor. Let them measure me by what they could see. The truth, the part they could never touch, was still waiting quietly, steady as breath beneath the noise. I grew up in a house where reputation mattered more than truth. My mother built her world around appearances, a place where the worth of a person could be calculated by the size of their paycheck or the title printed under their name. To her, morality and success were the same thing, and anyone who earned less had clearly done something wrong. My siblings learned early how to play her game. They chased promotions, corner offices, and company cars, feeding the image she wanted to show the world. I was the outlier, the one who chose to build something smaller, but real. After college, I started a social enterprise helping military veterans open small businesses. There were only 3 of us in the beginning, working from a single rented room with second-hand laptops and coffee that tasted like determination. The first year, our revenue barely reached $40,000, but every dollar came from someone's regained dignity. I thought that mattered. My mother didn't. She called it a hobby for broke dreamers, the kind of work people did before they gave up and got real jobs. Her words stung at first, but over time, I learned how to let them pass through me instead of sinking in. Each insult became a kind of training. Every remark that questioned my choices turned into a quiet rep, lifted in the gym of resilience. I started to understand that silence could be more powerful than defense. When you stop explaining yourself to people who only value trophies, you start saving your strength for the work that matters. The more I built, the less I needed their approval. Years of judgment shaped me into someone they could no longer understand. My discipline was born from rejection, my calm from chaos. I learned that peace was something you earn when you stop competing in games that don't reflect your values. The numbers in their accounts could never measure the purpose that anchored mine, so when they mocked me later, when they laughed at what they thought I lacked, I already knew the truth. Their power ended where my silence began. The music in the ballroom had shifted to something livelier, but the laughter at our table grew louder than the band. My brother was in the middle of a story about his latest deal, describing a 6-figure bonus as if it were a war medal. My sister followed, talking about the new condo she bought downtown, the marble countertops imported from Italy, the rooftop view of Dallas that made her feel alive. My mother's eyes glittered as she listened, basking in the reflected glow of their achievements. She repeated their words to the guests nearby, polishing every detail until admiration filled the air like perfume. I sat quietly, the outsider again, watching it all unfold as if from a distance. Their voices blurred into background noise, sharp and hollow. I reached into my bag and felt the edge of the envelope I had brought. It was plain, white, and unmarked, almost invisible against the tablecloth. When I placed it beside my glass, the room seemed to shift. My brother caught sight of it first and smirked. He leaned closer and said something about me trying another charity pitch. My sister laughed, adding that maybe it was filled with coupons this time. Even my mother chuckled, her voice soft but cutting. The laughter rippled across the table, joined by the kind of smiles that only exist when people feel safe mocking someone they believe cannot fight back. I didn't react. My hands stayed still, my eyes steady. Inside, I felt nothing sharp, only distance. Their words didn't reach me anymore. I had long understood that cruelty said more about the speaker than the target. The louder they laughed, the smaller they became. I lifted my glass, not to toast them, but to remind myself that silence, when chosen, can be its own kind of victory. The sound of laughter still lingered when the banquet hall manager appeared at the edge of our table. His suit was perfectly pressed, his posture composed, the kind of man who understood timing better than words. The music softened behind him, as if the room itself sensed something shifting. Conversations nearby slowed. I felt every eye start to turn. He stopped beside me, lowering his voice just enough to carry weight without volume. "Miss Carter," he said with a nod, "we've been waiting for your final approval before we begin the next stage." For a second, no one spoke. My mother blinked, confused, glancing between us. My brother leaned back in his chair, the smirk fading from his face. The guests who had been listening leaned in closer, pretending not to. I could feel the air tighten, the way silence sometimes grows thicker than sound. My mother finally broke it, laughing awkwardly. "She must be mistaken," she said, her tone meant to charm, not question. The manager didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on me, calm and professional. I gave a small nod, and he bowed slightly before stepping away, leaving a ripple of whispers in his wake. The glasses on the table clinked softly as someone shifted nervously. I didn't need to explain anything. The truth was already in motion, and the more they resisted it, the clearer it became. My father's eyes met mine from across the table, uncertain but searching. There was no triumph in my look, only stillness. The people who had spent the night measuring me suddenly found themselves without words to weigh. Their laughter had filled the room moments ago, but now every sound seemed to belong to me. Power didn't announce itself, it simply arrived, quiet and undeniable. The manager returned to the center of the hall, his voice calm but clear enough to carry across the tables. He thanked everyone for attending, and then explained that tonight's event had been made possible by a private investor. The crowd murmured as he continued, saying that the venue's recent renovation, a $3.2 million project completed just months ago, was funded entirely by the same company that had organized this celebration. Then he turned toward our table and said her name. The guests followed his gaze until it landed on me. The noise died in an instant. My mother's smile froze, her eyes darting from face to face, searching for an explanation. My brother let out a short laugh that never finished. My sister stared down at her plate, her fork motionless. The manager spoke again, thanking my company for investing in the future of local business and honoring families like my father's who had served their communities with integrity. Every word landed like a soft hammer, steady and unshakable. I stood slowly, not to make a scene but because stillness felt heavier than motion. My father's eyes were wide, confused, his hands folded tightly on the table. He looked both proud and unsure, as if he didn't want to believe it until he saw proof. I reached for the envelope and walked toward him. The sound of my heels was the only thing anyone could hear. The laughter from earlier had dissolved into a quiet that felt almost sacred. I placed the envelope in front of him and said softly that it belonged to him now. He hesitated before opening it, unfolding the papers with trembling fingers. Inside was the co-ownership document, transferring 30% of the venue to his name. For a moment, he didn't speak. His eyes glistened as he read, his chest rising in a deep, uneven breath. My mother's face had lost its practiced charm, her hands gripping the edge of the table like she needed something to hold her steady. I didn't look at her. My focus stayed on my father, the man who had taught me what dignity looked like when the world tried to take it away. The silence that filled the room no longer belonged to shame. It was respect. It was the sound of truth taking its rightful place. I didn't smile or explain or justify. I simply stood beside him, the weight of peace settling where humiliation once lived. The night had begun as a show of status, but it ended as a lesson in quiet justice. After the guests left and the lights dimmed, I stayed behind for a while, watching the staff clear the tables. The same room that had once felt like a stage for humiliation now held something quiet and whole. My father walked beside me, his eyes still soft with disbelief, and for the first time in years, we didn't need words. Peace filled the spaces where defense used to live. I realized then that value had nothing to do with wealth or applause. It was about walking through fire and coming out calm, about knowing you had nothing left to prove. A week later, a card arrived from my mother. It was short. She didn't apologize, but she wrote that my father was proud of me. I kept that card in my desk drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Dignity never demands acknowledgement. It exists whether anyone sees it or not. Sometimes I think back to that night and how easily things could have gone differently. I could have argued, shouted, or demanded recognition. But silence gave me everything pride could not. If you were in my place, would you have fought to be heard or let your quiet success tell the story for you?